remember the jingle. It was simple, catchy, and utterly inescapable. For a moment in time, it was the soundtrack of American fast food. It was a promise. In the depths of a recession, it was a lifeline. A full meal for just $5. For customers, the $5 footlong felt like a miracle. For Subway, it was the most successful marketing campaign in its history. But what if I told you that this iconic jingle wasn't a victory song, but a siren's call? That this billion-dollar idea was actually a billion-dollar trap? That this promotion, which propelled Subway to become the largest restaurant chain in the world by location count, simultaneously planted the seeds for one of the most spectacular and drawn-out declines in modern business history? This isn't just a story of a sandwich deal. This is a corporate tragedy, a case study in perverse incentives, and a cautionary tale about what happens when a company's branding becomes completely divorced from its business reality. This is the story of how the $5 footlong broke Subway. Our story doesn't begin in a sleek corporate boardroom in Milford, Connecticut. It starts in 2003, in a single, struggling Subway franchise in Miami, Florida. The owner, Stuart Frankel, was just trying to drive weekend traffic. His idea was simple: offer any footlong sub for $5. At the time, this was only about $1 less than the normal price at discount, but not a radical one. There were no coupons, no fine print, just a straightforward deal, and it worked spectacularly. Within 2 weeks, Frankel's weekly sales shot up from $14,000 to $23,000. This wasn't just a bump, it was a tidal wave. His store was now pulling in over 4 times the revenue of the average Subway location. Frankel, sensing he'd struck gold, expanded the promotion to his other franchises with similar results. He tried to bring this data to Subway's corporate headquarters, to show them the rocket fuel he'd accidentally invented. Their response? According to Frankel, they were skeptical it could actually make money. He'd later recount that they essentially thought he was an idiot. Corporate's reluctance was understandable from their perspective. Their entire model was built on a percentage of gross sales. They worried that such a deep discount would crater the franchisees' already thin margins, leading to unrest and store failures. So, they ignored it. But the idea was too powerful to die. The promotion began to spread organically, franchisor by franchisor, as word of its sales-boosting power grew. By 2008, it was a grassroots movement within the Subway system, and corporate could no longer look away. They agreed to a reluctant, limited test of a national $5 footlong campaign. The timing was nothing short of historic. In the fall of 2008, as Subway was preparing its launch, the U.S. economy plunged into the Great Recession. Lehman Brothers collapsed, the housing market cratered, millions lost their jobs, panic was in the air. And into this economic apocalypse, Subway launched its campaign. It wasn't just an ad, it was a public service announcement. A $5 meal felt substantial, responsible, and even a little triumphant. The jingle, crafted by the advertising agency DMI, was a masterstroke of auditory branding, so simple a child could remember it, so catchy you couldn't eject it from your brain. The results were immediate and staggering. In 1 year, the $5 footlong promotion generated $3.8 billion in sales. Let that number sink in. That was more than the total annual revenue of entire fast food chains like Arby's or Domino's. Subway's sales grew by 17% in 2008 alone, while the rest of the industry was flatlining or contracting. It was the marketing equivalent of a moonshot. But beneath the surface of this incredible success, Subway had just activated a doomsday device. To understand why the $5 footlong was a trap, you have to understand Subway's unique and, many would argue, predatory business model. Unlike most franchise systems, Subway's primary customer wasn't the person buying the sandwich, it was the person buying the franchise. Their entire revenue structure was built on 2 pillars. 1. Initial franchise fees, the cost to open a new store. 2. Weekly royalties, a cut of every dollar that comes into the register. Here's the critical part. Subway took 8% of weekly sales as a royalty fee, plus another 5% for a national advertising fund. That's a total of 5% of gross sales, one of the highest royalty rates in the entire fast food industry. Do you see the fatal flaw? When a customer bought a $5 footlong, Subway corporate immediately took its 5%, 62.5 cents, right off the top. It didn't matter what it cost the franchisee to make that sandwich, corporate got paid. The franchisee, however, was left with $4.37. From that, they had to pay for the food cost, the bread, meat, cheese, vegetables, labor, the employee who made it, rent, utilities, insurance, and other overhead. Industry analysts and countless franchisee lawsuits have broken down the math on many sandwiches, especially the more expensive meat-centric ones like the steak and cheese or turkey breast. The food cost alone could be $3.50 or more. After adding labor and rent, franchisees were often losing money on every $5 sandwich they sold, even on cheaper veggie subs. Profit margins were shaved down to a measly 30 to 50 cents. The $5 footlong created a perverse incentive. Corporate was incentivized to drive sales volume at any cost. Because their revenue was a percentage of that volume, franchisees, however, were incentivized to protect their profit margins, which the promotion destroyed. This wasn't a win-win. It was a win-lose. Corporate was winning, franchisees were losing, and the promotion that was meant to be a limited-time recession fighter became permanent. The customer expectation was set in stone. The jingle had drilled it into the public psyche. A Subway footlong is worth $5. Anything more felt like a rip-off. Franchisees were trapped. They couldn't afford to run the promotion, but they couldn't afford not to, because customers would go to the Subway down the street that was honoring it. They were caught in a brutal race to the bottom, and corporate, collecting its 62.5 cents per sandwich, was cheering them on. The $5 footlong didn't break a great business. It exposed a flawed one. The promotion poured gasoline on a fire that was already smoldering due to Subway's second fatal flaw, its strategy of hypergrowth at all costs. While most franchisors like McDonald's grant protected territories to prevent cannibalization, Subway famously did not. If your store was successful, corporate had no problem approving another franchisee to open a location just a few blocks away, or even across the street. Why? Because every new store meant another $15,000 initial fee and another stream of that sweet 5% royalty. Corporate's growth was tied to unit count, not unit economics. This led to insane market saturation. At its peak in 2015, Subway had 27,103 locations in the U.S. alone. That was more than McDonald's, 14,000, and Starbucks, 12,000, combined. But the comparison ends there. The average McDonald's location brought in over $2.7 million in annual revenue. The average Subway? A paltry $420,000. Subway wasn't winning because its stores were successful. It was winning because it had more of them, each one scraping by and cannibalizing the next. It was an empire of sand. The $5 footlong exacerbated this cannibalization. It turned stores against each other in a price war they couldn't win, all while corporate profited from the internal conflict. By the mid-2010s, the cracks became chasms. The quality of the food, long sacrificed on the altar of the $5 price point, became a national joke. The brand was rocked by a series of devastating scandals. 1. The 11-inch footlong. 2013, a customer in Australia posted a photo of a Subway sandwich next to a tape measure. It was 11 inches. The viral meme #11inch footlong became a symbol of the brand's cheapness and deception, leading to a class action lawsuit. 2. The Jared Fogle scandal. 2015, the brand's longtime spokesperson, the living embodiment of its healthy image, was convicted of unimaginably heinous crimes, eviscerating the brand's family-friendly persona. 3. The chicken controversy. 2017, a DNA analysis by a Canadian lab found that Subway's chicken contained only about 50% chicken DNA, with the rest being soy and other fillings. While Subway disputed the methodology, the headline "Subway chicken is 50% soy" was a PR nightmare from which it never fully recovered. The house of cards was collapsing. Between 2015 and 2023, Subway closed over 6,000 U.S. locations, wiping out nearly a quarter of its footprint. Franchisees, locked into leases and unable to raise prices, simply walked away from unprofitable stores. Meanwhile, competitors like Chipotle, Jersey Mike's, and Firehouse Subs ate Subway's lunch. They positioned themselves as higher quality, more transparent alternatives. They charged more, and customers were willing to pay because they perceived the value was there. Subway was stuck with a value brand identity and rising costs it couldn't pass on to its customers. The final, tragic irony of this story is that Subway is still haunted by the ghost of its own creation. In early 2025, in a desperate attempt to recapture the magic, Subway launched a new promotion, any footlong $4.99, It was a clear admission that $5 was no longer feasible, but a reluctant nod to the power of that old number. It failed, miserably. Franchisees reported little to no uptick in traffic. Why? Because the problem was never the number itself, the problem was the perception of value. For over a decade, Subway had trained customers that its sandwiches were worth $5. The food quality, the experience, the brand, it was all calibrated to that price point. Asking $4.99 for the same product felt like a 40% price hike. Not a deal. Customers had moved on to brands that offered better quality for a higher price, or they sought true value elsewhere. The $5 footlong had permanently branded Subway as a cheap, low-quality option. In a world now focused on fresh ingredients and fast casual quality, that is a death sentence. In 2023, the once mighty empire was sold to the private equity firm Roark Capital, the same firm that owns Arby's, Dunkin', and Jimmy John's. Roark is known for aggressive cost-cutting and consolidation, a fitting end for a brand that was built not on the quality of its food or the health of its franchises, but on the sheer volume of its locations. The $5 footlong jingle is a nostalgic relic now, but for Subway, it's more than that. It's the echo of a golden age that never really was, the sound of a trap snapping shut, and a permanent reminder that in business, the most successful idea you ever have might just be the one that destroys you. If you want to see another fast food giant, check out this video on how the dollar menu still haunts McDonald's.